with Paul Harrell.
Studio, welcome back. We've got Ms. Hannah Webb is with us. Hannah, welcome.
Thank you. It's always good to be here.
Always good to have you. So first off, congratulations on law school.
Thank
Tell
you.
us, you're in your first semester, the end of the first semester.
Yes.
So I'm sure, what, do they call them finals?
Yes.
Okay, so how?
Yeah, they're hot and heavy.
Okay, so how's that going?
So prior to this week, because I'm now studying for finals, I've had a great experience. I love law school. I think it's been very enjoyable. The workload is super intense, and that's the biggest change. But as a whole, it's been super enjoyable because I've talked about it in your program before. I'm completely unconventional. I have a biology background. I thought I was going to go to med school up until it's literally been a year and a half, basically, since I've changed my mind to go to law school. So I did a complete 180. I jumped into law school completely blind, had no idea what I was walking into, and I have loved it, thoroughly enjoyed it. It's very different, but in a good way, and it's been very refreshing. And obviously, I love the legal field for various political reasons. And so it's like my hobby has manifested itself into my work now. So it's been nice.
That's great. So being a conservative was, you certainly are conservative. We've had you on the Young Conservative, so you're saying it was a hobby, but now it's like you're able to actually really get into the meat and potatoes of it. What's funny is I got a family member, my sister did the same thing. She had a zoology degree and wanted to go the med school route, and then at the last minute was like, I'll take the LSAT. And then, boom, it just, took off from there. So the unconventional route, I think, can make some of the best attorneys.
So, and actually, it's been the best thing that's happened to me because undergrad, it was just extremely difficult. And it was very self-taught. So they'd hand you a textbook and say, here you go, learn the whole thing by finals, and we'll just kind of talk about it during class.
Yeah.
And essentially what I would do is make my own study guides, which now in law school are outlines, and that's what you study. So I have this great study background because I had to. And the way of thinking that a biology person or a medical person, or math and science really, is the same type of process that you have to apply in the legal field. Like you learn the facts in biology, so you learn the rules in law, and then you apply them to your situations, like you apply them to your patient, and now you apply it to your case. So it's been a huge benefit for me because all the English people, the philosophy people, the political science people, they were taught to create your own thoughts, create your own ideas about what's going on. You don't get to do that in legal field anymore. You have to take what the law is and fit it to your scenario. And then on top of that, I haven't taken an English class since my senior year of high school, maybe. So I write like a fifth grader, and I'm not ashamed of that. My first memo I got back, the teacher put a question mark on it and said, "Are you missing words here?" And I was like, "No, that was a complete thought. I guess it was just an incomplete sentence."
Yeah.
Which I've developed since then. But it's been wonderful because you're supposed to write like an eighth grader. An eighth grader is supposed to be able to take your paper and read what you wrote because you're not always talking to your legal
peer.
Yes. You're talking to your client, or the public or whatever. And so it's been wonderful. I've been able to be molded into how they want me to write. And my thinking is just the way my brain is programmed to work is how they want you to start thinking.
Now, I was talking to you during the break. I'm talking with Hannah Webb. As far as this idea of indoctrination, I know you're only in your first semester, but you don't feel that way at all, right? You feel very free, right?
I really don't. So I've talked about it on your show before. My undergrad was terrible, especially as a biology major. I was shocked how indoctrinated it was. And so in the legal profession, obviously everyone has a political side. That's just the nature of the field. And so I expected it to be much worse in law school. I expected to be in the total minority and just indoctrination left and right. I have been thoroughly surprised with how that's not the case. In the majority of my classes, it's extremely professional. They come in, they teach you the black letter law. They'll talk about underlying policy, but for the most part, they argue both sides. It's only in one of my classes where the opinion leads the conversation. Of course, that's super annoying. I'm paying you to teach me the law. I'm not paying you to tell me your opinion.
Right.
But on the flip side of that, just as a legal field, it's okay to be political within your profession. I have no problem with professors having a political affiliation and campaigning for that cause in their professional capacity, especially when they're writing papers and things like that. That's fine with me. So that atmosphere
think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. The reports were yesterday, just from what I could tell, that Facebook was experiencing a lot of problems yesterday. Did you guys hear any of that? Obviously, our video didn't even happen yesterday on the digital platform Facebook. We were broadcasting on YouTube and, of course, to stations across Arkansas, but it was very strange. And then I've got a story here that how the Facebook advertising function wasn't working. And they're saying it failed to work for a lot of people. And, of course, this is a 2 days. Well, I mean, yesterday, 2 days before Black Friday. So a lot of people wondering what's going on with Facebook. And not to mention the bath that they've been taking. Really, Silicon Valley or tech companies in general just taking huge losses. And you just got to wonder what is coming next, you know. I keep saying, you know, that you guys should go to the Conduit News YouTube page and subscribe to that. Click the little bell to receive notifications. But you're more than welcome to watch at facebook.com/Conduit News. But I keep putting this little tag on the end of there while the platform still exists. And the reason I'm doing that is because I just have this feeling that, well, for example, we were talking with Silicon Valley expert last week, and I asked him straight up, I said, is Facebook listening to everything we say? And this gentleman who used to work for Facebook said, yeah, they are. I was like, huh, okay. He said, probably. They probably are. You know, there's this phenomenon that's going around where people talk about random things, and they start seeing advertisements for those things on their Facebook feed. It's got a lot of people upset, if you know what I mean. And I don't think we know. I don't think we know the truth. I don't think we know to what end, how bad it actually may get. You know what I'm saying? Just my thought. Who was it we were talking to last week? Hang on, I'm scrolling through the videos over at Conduit News. Do you remember who it was? We had him on. Let's see. It wasn't Bob Zeidman. That's who it was. We were talking to Bob Zeidman, who actually was an initial investor in that Oculus company. And I asked him point blank, and he also, I believe, worked for Facebook for a time in its infancy. And he said, yeah, they're probably listening to everything we're saying. Anyway, folks, you guys, if you're on the road right now, many of you may be traveling to family member's house because it's time to, it's time to make I guess AAA says it's probably going to be one of the busiest times on the road in quite a while in terms of, Thanksgiving Day travel. So first off, I want to remind you that you need to be careful on the road and you need to pay attention. There is, I believe in Arkansas, there was a woman who was struck by a car and killed on Highway 412. So just got to be very careful out there. Watch for pedestrians, obviously. And I just hope that everybody gets from point A to point B as safely as possible. How about that? At the bottom of this hour, we're going to be talking. I'm going to introduce you to a journalist by the name of Tammy Teague. Excited to talk to her. Tammy Teague is a reporter for the Resident Press. Resident Press, it's a community-focused news, and it's over in western Arkansas. And the reason I want to have her on is because Tammy Teague wrote a story, one of the only outlets to write a story other than Conduit News, about how constitutional carry of firearm in this state is legal, has been upheld thanks to a judge's decision, and what he wrote in dicta in his opinion. So I'm going to have her on, talk to her about that. Then at the top of the next hour, we're going to be talking to some Arkansas farmers that have gotten a petition together to end dicamba use. They're doing this after the EPA essentially says that dicamba can be used. The EPA, this headline on the front page of the Gazette today, that according to emails, EPA scientists' dicamba input went unheeded, meaning the EPA's own scientists saying that dicamba doesn't need to be used have been ignored. Emails obtained by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette through the Freedom of Information Act show that EPA scientists on October 5th sought a 443-foot infield buffer between areas where dicamba is sprayed and where there may be endangered species. Those buffers instead were set at 57 feet in new regulations announced October 31st. The power of Monsanto, ladies and gentlemen. The power of Monsanto. It'll be interesting to talk to these farmers and see what their take is on this. Then we'll talk to Mr. Michael Dougherty. Always fun to talk to him. You know, there's talk about putting microchips in employees. You've heard this in the news. We've talked about it a few times. Michael Dougherty, who's the CEO of the Cyber Education Foundation, will be here to talk with us about what's going on over in the United Kingdom in that capacity. I want to start today, though, by remembering where we came from. Where we came from. We're about to celebrate Thanksgiving. Now, there's some headlines out there that you can read today that ask the question, is Thanksgiving a racist holiday? No, it's not. But the left is going to constantly try to trash it in any way they can. Number one is because they know the truth of Thanksgiving, which is the triumph of capitalism over communism. And you can go read Governor William Bradford's journal. And it's an amazing what happened when they gave people incentive to keep what they worked for and everything else. We're going to focus on, first off, two presidents, George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. The first Thanksgiving Day proclamation of George Washington didn't necessarily institute or kick off a yearly celebration. That wasn't done until Abraham Lincoln. But this was a Thanksgiving Day proclamation, and in all of these things, there's three of them that I like to focus on. George Washington, and then there's two from Abraham Lincoln, one during the Civil War. And the thing that strikes me the most is their reliance on Almighty God in all of these affairs, in the affairs of men, and their humility that I just think in many regards in public life today we certainly lack. So here it is. This is George Washington, 1789, where he says this: "Whereas it is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God." Wow. Just that first line is pretty piercing, isn't it? That it's the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God. Sounds like an American president, doesn't it? I mean, sounds like a person. I mean, obviously, if you read the Declaration of Independence, where they acknowledge a creator, and we established a country by confessing that we don't have all the answers, that it's God that gives men the rights. Now, there are a bunch of nations across this world, today and then, that would completely disagree with the opening statement here. I think it's worth pointing that out. Do we agree with this today? Whereas it is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey His will, to be grateful for His benefits, and humbly to implore His protection and favor. And whereas both houses of Congress have by their joint committee requested me to recommend to the people of the United States a day of public thanksgiving and prayer to be observed by acknowledging with grateful hearts the many signal favors of Almighty God, especially by affording them an opportunity peaceably to establish a form of government for their safety and happiness. Now, therefore, I do recommend and assign Thursday, the 26th day of November next, to be devoted by the people of these states to the service of that great and glorious being, who is the beneficent author of all the good that was, that is, or that will be, that we may then all unite in rendering unto Him our sincere and humble thanks for His kind care and protection of the people of this country previous to their becoming a nation, for the signal and manifold mercies and the favorable interpositions of His providence, which we experienced in the course and conclusion of the late war, for the great degree of tranquility, union, and plenty, which we have since enjoyed, for the peaceable and rational manner in which we have been enabled to establish constitutions of government for our safety and happiness, and particularly the national one now lately instituted for the civil and religious liberty with which we are blessed, and the means we have of acquiring and diffusing useful knowledge, and in general, for all the great and various favors which He hath been pleased to confer upon us, and also that we may then unite in most humbly offering our prayers and supplications to the great Lord and ruler of nations, and beseech Him to pardon our national and other transgressions, to enable us all, whether in public or private stations, to perform our several and relative duties properly and punctually, to render our national government a blessing to all people by constantly being a government of wise, just, and constitutional laws, discreetly and faithfully executed and obeyed, to protect and guide all sovereigns and nations, especially such as have shown kindness unto us, and to bless them with good government, peace, and concord, to promote the knowledge and practice of true religion and virtue, and the increase of science among them and us, and generally to grant unto all mankind such a degree of temporal prosperity as He alone knows to be best. Given under my hand at the city of New York, the 3rd day of October, in the year of our Lord, 1789, George Washington. Now, what an incredible first Thanksgiving Day proclamation. And you would think that they can't get any better than that. And arguably, they can't. But then you're going to read Abraham Lincoln's Thanksgiving Day proclamations. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Law school is more liberal than it is conservative, obviously. But especially with millennials, people talk all the time how there's no conservatives anymore. They're all liberal. Mm-hmm. All my friends are conservative. And of course, like attracts like. Of course, that's the people you're drawn to.
That's good.
But even well before I knew how these people voted, those are the people I became friends with. They're all conservative. And we are in the minority, but it's not as much of a minority as what the media will lead you to believe that it is. And have loved how I am in the minority because it's challenged me to be a better thinker. So I've spent, especially, it's been about a year since I've been this involved in politics. It's actually been a year anniversary since I've been on your show. I don't know if you know that.
I did not. Are you serious?
It's maybe 2 weeks past a year since I've been on your show for the first time. It was still the Paul Harrell program back then.
Wow. Yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy. Okay. Well,
so it's been.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you,
Hannah.
So it's been. That was really the kickoff of when I dug into the meat of things. And that was right when I decided to go to law school. And since
the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back. I actually do feel better. Believe it or not, my voice would say otherwise. But, hey, welcome back to the program. Happy Thanksgiving, or day before Thanksgiving. Again, everybody be careful on the road. Take that extra opportunity to be extra careful with you and your family as you're traveling. Keep the hands at 10 and 2. So we just read George Washington's Thanksgiving Day address. And if you skip ahead from 1789 to October 3rd of 1863, things in this country looked much different than they did then. The country's in the middle of its most divisive time in history, and it's in the middle of the Civil War. And the President of the United States of America, Abraham Lincoln, wrote this and said this in his proclamation. The year that is drawing towards its close has been filled with the blessings of fruitful fields and healthful skies. To these bounties, which are so constantly enjoyed that we are prone to forget the source from which they come, others have been added, which are of so extraordinary a nature that they cannot fail to penetrate and soften even the heart, which is habitually insensible to the ever-watchful providence of Almighty God. In the midst of a civil war of unequaled magnitude and severity, which has sometimes seemed to foreign states to invite and to provoke their aggression, peace has been preserved with all nations. Order has been maintained. The laws have been respected and obeyed, and harmony has prevailed everywhere except in the theater of military conflict. While that theater has been greatly contracted by the advancing armies and navies of the Union, needful diversions of wealth and of strength from the fields of peaceful industry to the national defense have not arrested the plow, the shuttle, or the ship. The axe has enlarged the borders of our settlements, and the mines, as well of iron and coal and of precious metals, have yielded even more abundantly than heretofore. Population has steadily increased, notwithstanding the waste that has been made in the camp, the siege, and the battlefield, and the country rejoicing in the consciousness of augmented strength and vigor is permitted to expect continuance of years with large increase of freedom. No human counsel hath devised, nor hath any mortal hand worked out these great things. They are the gracious gifts of the Most High God, who, while dealing with us in anger for our sins, hath nevertheless remembered mercy. It has seemed to me fit and proper that they should be solemnly, reverently, and gratefully acknowledged, as with one heart and one voice, by the whole American people. I do therefore invite my fellow citizens in every part of the United States, and also those who are at sea and those who are sojourning in foreign lands, to set apart and observe the last Thursday of November next as a day of thanksgiving and praise to our beneficent Father who dwelleth in the heavens. And I recommend to them that while offering up the ascriptions justly due to him for such singular deliverances and blessings, they do also with humble penitence for our national perverseness and disobedience commend to his tender care all those who have become widows, orphans, mourners, or sufferers in the lamentable civil strife in which we are unavoidably engaged, and fervently implore the interposition of the Almighty hand to heal the wounds of the nation and to restore it as soon as may be consistent with the divine purposes to the full enjoyment of peace, harmony, tranquility, and union. In testimony whereof I hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the United States to be affixed, done in the city of Washington this 3rd day of October in the year of our Lord. And that again is in 1863. President Abraham Lincoln. Man, the end there is like a gut punch. Is that like a gut punch to anybody else? At the very end of the speech, this prayer of thankfulness to God, even in a time of civil war. Even in a time of civil war. See, this was the level of faith that our leaders had. Men who are willing to say and have such a faith in God, have an understanding of what the concept of a perfect God actually means. And saying things like, hey, please end this war whenever it is time to end it. Whenever it's time to end it, to accomplish whatever is supposed to be accomplished in this terribleness. It was a belief that there was somebody actively in control and that there was a reason. And a lot of times we as humans don't know. We don't know why. Why in the world would this happen, right? You hear this all the time. This is why the left in this country, by the way, today is so offended when something bad happens and we say we are praying for our countrymen. Our thoughts or our prayers are with you. I just want you to understand, because I know there may be some of you who have bought into this. Like, yeah, it's pretty insensitive to say that we're praying for somebody. Well, that's exactly what Americans have always done, because we recognize that we're not God and that there is a God, and he does see all, and he sees completely 100% objective truth. There's no political debate with what he sees. What he sees is the plain truth. He knows what's going on. To say it is really, that's really a crude way to say it. He knows what's going on. So much more than that. We may see one or two things, while he sees 1,000, an infinite amount of things that are happening that we're not privy to. And it's that understanding that informs the theology, at least in this piece that's written by Abraham Lincoln, and that's also the one earlier that written by President George Washington. Again, the end of that. Commend to his tender care all those who have become widows, orphans, mourners, or sufferers in the lamentable civil strife, meaning the Civil War, in which we are unavoidably engaged, and fervently implore the interposition of the Almighty hand to heal the wounds of the nation and to restore it as soon as may be consistent with divine purposes. Meaning, as soon as it's your will, let it be done. Also, I would like to point out, I have had many politicians on this program, many people, many commentators, and I keep asking them the same question. Have you ever seen a nation as divided as we are right now? So, excuse me. So, when you go to Thanksgiving, and I know many of you are going, and many of you have families that fall differently on different political issues. Maybe you don't want to talk about politics. Now, I'm actually blessed with a family, for the most part. We pretty much agree on everything. But, hey, one way that it might be, I would just encourage you, maybe when you get together and you say your prayer, say a prayer to heal the divided nation that we are right now. That might be worthwhile. What do you think? What do you say, Arkansas? We're going to take a break and be back here in just a moment.
Then I've just been surrounded by people who think like me. And that's wonderful and refreshing, and you learn a lot, and it's a great place to start when you're just getting started out, because you almost have mentors that develop out of it. But now I'm at the place in life where I need to be challenged, and somebody needs to push me on my ideas so that I strengthen in them. Or it's never ever a bad thing to understand how the other side thinks and why they think it.
That's exactly right.
So that's been a wonderful thing about law school. My favorite professor that I have, he is a wonderful teacher. He may be the best teacher I've ever had in my life. He is as liberal as I am conservative. We have the best conversations, and I respect him so much, because every conversation we have, he tells me what he thinks and then all the factual reasons why.
Yeah.
I respect that all day long, and it challenges me to dig into the meat of what I believe and why I believe it.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like some civil debates are going on, and that's really good. Now that's different than saying, what happens at Berkeley when a conservative speaker shows up and they burn the campus down. So that's refreshing. What were your thoughts? What are your thoughts about that? But what are your thoughts about the midterms and everything, how everything shook out? What's your political thought? As a millennial, let's get the
So interesting about a millennial. Me and Joe were just talking about this. I'm almost a Generation Z.
Which is what? Which is what?
Know.
What is that?
I don't know. So both the Generation Z, the cap is the mid 1990s.
Okay.
And the start of millennials is the mid 1990s. I was born in 1995.
Wow.
Put me in whatever category
it's
you
want. It's like
want.
the year Jurassic Park came out and TLC had the music video "Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls." I'm serious. Yeah, that's how old I am. But that is wild that would be. Anyway, go ahead.
So
Sorry.
I fit into one of those categories.
I'm old.
And Joe, you can if you go fact check this and I'm wrong, blame Joe. He said that Generation Z has been the most conservative little niche of all the generations that have come up.
Really?
So that may explain a lot about myself. Who knows?
Yeah.
The midterms didn't shock me. I did think federally, I knew we'd take the Senate and flip seats. I knew we'd do that. I really thought we'd hold the House, so I'm very disappointed that we didn't.
I did too. Larry Schweikert thought that as well. Matter of fact, right after Larry Schweikert was on this program, Rush Limbaugh gave him a shout out. That was fascinating.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because Limbaugh was looking at his same analytics and data as well. Of course, now there's an article saying that they're accusing Fox News of making Orange County in California go completely blue, because they called the election, with several hours to go with the polls still open out in Orange County.
Very interesting.
And it was so weird when Fox News called it for the Dems when they hadn't flipped the seats they needed on the East Coast.
Right.
But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So yeah, I was disappointed that they didn't take the House or keep the House.
Right. And I didn't have. Of course, I was listening to political analysis, but after a while, that gets to just get.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
I cannot quit coughing. All right. Welcome back this morning. Feel free. You can text us at 870-275-9799. You can also sound off over at the Facebook page, which apparently is up and running again. From yesterday. That's facebook.com/Conduit News. But don't forget, go into the YouTube page as well. Like or subscribe and click the little bell to receive notifications. And we're also broadcasting over at conduitnews.com as well via live stream. So you want to check that out as well. And the great stories at Conduit News. You also want to shop at Conduit News, by the way. And I'll tell you more about that here in just a moment. But folks, I want to tell you first of all, this segment is brought to you by the Patriots of Act 746. Now, they are on a mission, by the way, to educate Arkansans about your Arkansas laws concerning guns, your Second Amendment rights, but specifically your rights here in Arkansas. And that Act 746 decriminalized guns, the possession of guns, in public to the point where we have constitutional carry in this state. And there was actually... And if you want to find out more, by the way, go to Facebook and search for the Patriots of Act 746. There was actually really a campaign that the Patriots of Act 746 started on, a journey, if you will, a trek, if you will. And they started this trek about 5 years ago, where they started saying things, radical things like, Hey, did you know in Arkansas you don't need a permit to carry your weapon open? Then they said something even more wild. Hey, did you know in Arkansas you don't need a permit to carry your gun concealed? Uh-oh. That didn't go over too well with a lot of authorities, but they kept saying this over and over. And there'd be a prosecutor that would drop a charge from an officer who arrested somebody for possession of a gun, but the prosecutor kept dropping the charge. And then there'd be another prosecutor that would drop the charge because they were reading the law, and they knew that they couldn't get a conviction because of what the law now said. And then, back in October of this year, there was a judge that in dicta wrote, in his opinion, the state of Arkansas's gun law concerning a Fourth Amendment case, a probable cause case, but stated clearly that carrying a weapon is not an excuse for pulling somebody over and following somebody. And that was a big deal. Now, Conduit News reported on it. Obviously, the Patriots VEC 746 issued statements. But there was actually another media outlet called the Resident Press, and you can find them at residentpress.com. And a journalist, a reporter, reported on this. Her name is Tammy Teague. Her story here, Constitutional Carry Law Upheld. This was back on November the 2nd. She wrote this. And Tammy joins us now on the phone. Tammy, welcome to Conduit News Radio this morning. How are you?
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing very good. Now, I also understand you've got your publisher there on the phone as well, right?
Yes, my publisher, Jason Baggett.
Jason, how you doing?
Good morning.
How you doing, Jason?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having us. We appreciate this.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Tammy, let me talk to you first. So, how did you first find out about this, and what compelled you to report this news?
Sure. I actually worked at a former newspaper with a young lady, and she is a member of Patriots of Act 746. And she had sent me a message and said, this happens. You might want to look into it. And it's kind of one of my things. Especially, I was surprised that nobody had looked into it. So I began to dig into it, and sure enough, it has gotten no coverage. So I contacted a few different agencies, and I contacted some of, our state representative, and Representative Marcus Richmond got back to me. I kind of sat on it for a little while, but when I heard back from him, I felt like, this is newsworthy. When you have a state representative that comes out in support, and matter of fact, if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and read what his statement was. He said, in a quote, in the Taft case, the judge ruled that you did not have to have a concealed carry permit to carry concealed. Act 746 folks have been waiting on this ruling, and they got what was needed. I am pleased with the ruling. I do not believe we have to have permission to carry. The permit in Arkansas was and is one of the most expensive around our area. The training was questionable in many places and wasn't worth the cost. So I felt like that was, I think it's important that it affects a lot of our readership, and that's what we're here for. That's what we're the heart of community news at Resident Press, and so this was important for me to report on.
Yeah, and I think it's a big deal that State Representative Marcus Richmond, I mean, he's not only state representative from that area that you're covering, but also we're talking about the majority leader of the Arkansas House of Representatives. Now, you would think that this would get picked up other places, and other people would report it and start asking questions. Wait, what happened in this particular court case? What did the judge say? But it's really kind of been crickets for the most part.
Sure, and that's, I'm not sure because the ruling, I've gone over it and over it because it's important that, we're not right, we're not left, we report facts and let people make their decision based on those facts. And, the fact is that in this case, this Taft versus Arkansas, this judge from Montgomery County said that, merely possessing a weapon is not a crime in the state of Arkansas, and that with the purpose to intent to unlawfully pull the handgun, they have to prove unlawful intent. And, this gentleman in this case had a handgun in the waistband of his pants. And so those are facts, and that's what we report.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I'm reading from the opinion as well, Tammy, and what's interesting here is the state's argument. And when you go up to the middle of page 9 in the ruling, the state argued that Officer Davis seized Taft because he, quote, had to determine the lawfulness of Taft's conduct going in and out of the store and carrying the weapon and acting suspiciously. Yeah. I mean, that is huge that the judge rejects that argument because of because of Act 746.
Absolutely. So, it's clear. It's important that they have case. This is case law now, and so I'm not sure why nobody else has picked it up. But we are our own, and it's important that things that affect our readers, that we're reporting on them. This clearly affects our readers, and so it's important for us to report on that. So,
so Jason Baggett, the publisher here, just tell us a little bit about how you got into into this particular business, and tell us about this local website, residentpress.com, and what your background is.
Sure, thank you very much. Well, it's kind of a weird story, to be honest with you. I never intended nor wanted to get into the news business. Several years ago, I had to work with a local paper, and they misspelled a child's name, and that child's name was my son. And it affected me personally. That was his 5 minutes of fame. So I used my marketing background, my website building background, and just several different elements that I've kind of grown into to start this website. And it had a very slow start. The initial intent was just to cover our hometown and outlying areas. And then all of a sudden it just took off. The premise of it was, and this is kind of, Tammy has said time and time again, we're community-focused news, and we are. We don't cover some of the big cities. We don't cover national news. We cover the heartbeat of what's happening in our local communities. But the kind of the opinion and the tagline I've been using is how can you trust a news source on facts if they can't spell someone's name right? and I say that with a lot of joking, but there's a lot of truth to that. And Tammy just, her heart and her passion is involved in this. You can see it in her work. Each article is really, really fact-driven. In fact, we would rather wait on an article instead of push it out. But we want it to be factual. We want it to be truthful. If not, we're not going to publish it. And then from there, we've actually grown into another website that covers an additional area to the northeast, and people know us for our heart. We're just very blessed that we have that following and the public opinion that they trust.
Wow. Now, talk about you talk about it's local community focus. So go ahead, because we're on multiple stations across the state. So go ahead and tell us which communities Resident Press is focused on.
Resident Press covers the areas from just north of Hackett, Arkansas, through Mansfield, and just south of Waldron, Arkansas, and the outlying communities such as Huntington, Hartford, Dayton, those little smaller towns and smaller communities. Resident 22 News covers just west of Barling through Lavaca, Arkansas. We're going to be adding Charleston, Arkansas to that, hopefully around the first of the year.
You know, I want to point out here that this is such a great opportunity. We live in a period right now, because of the openness and the freedom of the internet, where this is able to happen, and you're able to build a following based on, reputation, consistency, and things like that. And I just want to point out, this is just in my opinion, this is why we need to leave the internet alone. There have been people floating, things about how journalists need to get, credentialed and things like that and that's to stop people from being able to do exactly what you guys are trying to do. And so I just want to say thank you for being willing to, be this arbiter, be this messenger, and put the facts out there, and then let people make up their own minds. I think it certainly is a lost practice today, for sure.
Well, I personally appreciate that. And I'll tell you, this year, this past 12 months has really shown us the fruits of our labor. We've had seniors in high school take senior photos in our T-shirts. That was probably one of the most jaw-dropping moments.
Wow.
We've had, how many news sources can you say that's had their, a senior take their senior picture in one of your T-shirts? We've actually, when we go to places, and we are credentialed. The safety and the well-being of Tammy and everyone who on our team is my first and primary focus. I would never send them into any area that would be harmful.
Well, now they can carry a gun if they want. If they want, Jason.
Exactly.
That's right. Good. That's good, Paul.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you one thing that really showed me what we're doing and how we're doing it is when we get on a scene or an event, you can hear people, Resonant Press is here. Hey, that's Resonant Press. And the little kids want their pictures taken and all of that. But
wow.
But we share the success as a team, and we do this for our readers and the people.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great. Well, Mr. Baggett, I certainly appreciate coming on the program. And Tammy, give you the last word here. Do you think we're going to get more stories, more developments? I mean, I'm sure as let me ask you this, Tammy. Did you reach out to the Arkansas State Police, for example, and ask them about this Taft versus Arkansas ruling?
I did reach out to the Arkansas State Police. I am completely transparent, and I discussed with Gary the fact that if someone can present facts, not opinions, but facts on anything that I've reported is untrue, I welcome that.
Yeah.
I am no expert and don't claim to be an expert on laws.
Well, the reason I asked that is just because Marcus Richmond has a comment, and then you reached out to the Arkansas State Police for comment, and I'm assuming they did not respond. Is that correct?
They did not respond.
Okay.
So
I just wanted to make sure everybody knew. In the interest of being just straight news, you are attempting
Absolutely.
to get both sides of the story here.
Absolutely, fair and balanced,
Okay.
and I give everybody the same opportunity, and that's no bad reflection on Arkansas State Police, whatever. But I did provide that opportunity, and I did not hear back.
All righty. Well, Tammy Teague, appreciate it, reporter for ResonantPress.com, and we also appreciate Mr. Jason Baggett being with us this morning. I hope you guys have a blessed and happy Thanksgiving, okay?
Thank you so much, and also Gary asked me to say on behalf of the Patriots of Act 746, Happy Thanksgiving, and behalf of us also.
All right.
Everyone.
All right.
Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Thank you, guys. Have a great morning and the rest of your break. Yeah, folks, Patriots of Act 746. On a mission to educate Arkansans about your gun rights. Now, go to the Facebook page while the platform still exists. Go to the Facebook page and search for Patriots of Act 746. And it's a closed group, but it's 17,000 strong, 17,000 plus. Ask to be a member, and now you're going to get access to a ton of great information, a ton of knowledgeable patriots that believe in the natural, God-given right of self-defense, that it is a human right. And that is what has informed all of their decisions when it comes to the laws about your gun rights here in Arkansas. We're going to take a break. Going to be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
On my nerves, quite frankly. So nothing more than a hunch, just because what happened back in the general election with Trump said, I'm going to take it. I believed him. And so this time he said, red wave. By golly, I believed you because you were right last time.
Yeah.
But none of that's a shock. And I don't think it's going to be anything huge detrimental to us. It's going to make things much more complicated.
Yeah.
But the fact that we do have the Senate and Trump, I don't think it's going to be as bad as what it could be. So I'm okay with that.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We've got, the potential, she's going to be the next one, you would think. I mean, she's not going to retire. We don't want anything bad to happen to her. I mean, obviously, but I think a lot of people look at that and they say, hey, listen, this is probably going to be another appointment for Trump at some point in the future. And you'd think that whoever it is, Amy Comey Barrett, is going to sail through confirmation at this point.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So, hey, just through the rest of the week, obviously we're not going to be here tomorrow or Friday, but we'll be back here with Monday with bells on. Probably literally, because it's Christmas time after this. Okay, sorry. I'm a huge I'm a huge fan of Christmas and everything Christmas. And anybody that listens to the show, you just know this. So, kind of digressing from that. Anybody ever see the movie V for Vendetta? Joe, have you ever seen the movie V for Vendetta? The guy with the Guy Fawkes mask, he's trying to blow up Par. I mean, he's a terrorist. The guy, I mean, that's, but the government's tyrannical. That's the first time you saw it. It was a year and a half ago. All right. I saw it when it came out in theaters 10 years ago or whatever. I mean, it's been a long time. But I used to think it was an amazing movie. You know, oh my gosh, it was so amazing. It really isn't. I mean, it's not bad, but it's not like, it doesn't hold up very well. I mean, I remember it appealed, I think, more to my liberal sensibilities back then. But, excuse me. I actually think it had to be more like 15 years ago or something, not 10. I've been on the air for 9 years, so it had to be a long time ago. But anyway, 2005, so there we go. So, there's a premise in that movie where the reason the government that's in power at the time, that's tyrannical government, it's in power because there was a massive virus that killed a bunch of people. And then the government worked really hard to come up with a cure, right? Come to find out, in the movie, you realize that it was all a big plot, that they had the cure already, and they just wanted to, basically, here's, all of this, here's the virus, here's all this death, we're going to use it to take control of the government and then provide the cure because we saved the day, right? Pretty diabolical stuff. And the reason I'm thinking about that diabolical plot is because I can't help but think about it when I think about dicamba. This is just my personal opinion, but it's very strange to me that you have dicamba that drifts on crops and kills people's soybeans, kills people's property, and that it just so happens that the company that's responsible for making it then has the cure, which is a dicamba-resistant soybean. Now, does anybody think that that's just a little bit odd? Does anybody think that's just a little bit wrong? We'll talk to 3 farmers coming up next. We have a honeybee farmer, or a honey farmer. We have a organic farmer, and we have a berry farmer. All 3 Arkansans will be here when we come back to talk about this. And you know what? It's not a coincidence the way things work out, right? In relation to our Thanksgiving Day speeches. On the front page of the Arkansas Democrat Gazette today, EPA scientists' dicamba input went unheeded. The EPA has now made a ruling on dicamba and that it can be used, and they ignored their own scientists' recommendations about how dangerous this stuff is. My freedom ends where yours begins. Thomas Jefferson said, if it neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg, it's okay. Well, when you can't control what you're spraying and it drifts onto other people's property and kills it. And folks, don't think this isn't a serious issue. Don't think this isn't a serious issue. There were 2 farmers that got into an altercation in Mississippi County, and one of them pulled out a gun and shot the other one over dicamba drift. This is a serious issue. Hits home. We need to have a serious debate about it. And I actually would welcome the other side. The pro-dicamba people, you're welcome to come on this program and talk. We're going to take a break, and we're going to be back here in just a moment.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
On my nerves, quite frankly. So nothing more than a hunch, just because what happened back in the general election with Trump said, I'm going to take it. I believed him. And so this time he said, red wave. By golly, I believed you because you were right last time.
Yeah.
But none of that's a shock. And I don't think it's going to be anything huge detrimental to us. It's going to make things much more complicated.
Yeah.
But the fact that we do have the Senate and Trump, I don't think it's going to be as bad as what it could be. So I'm okay with that.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We've got, the potential, she's going to be the next one, you would think. I mean, she's not going to retire. We don't want anything bad to happen to her. I mean, obviously, but I think a lot of people look at that and they say, hey, listen, this is probably going to be another appointment for Trump at some point in the future. And you'd think that whoever it is, Amy Coney Barrett, is going to sail through confirmation at this point. With what is it, 53-47?
Yes. So kudos to Ruth Bader Ginsburg for breaking her ribs and being back to work like 2 days later.
Yep, that's pretty big
Gotta
deal.
respect that.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta respect that. So, again, about being politically challenged, law school has been the first time that I've ever been introduced with the idea of term limits for the Supreme Court and maybe the dangers of having the Supreme Court weighted one side or the other. And that's been an interesting conversation. I have no dead set feeling on that, but it was interesting to hear the commentary on it because I do think we love that it's conservative right now, but what's it going to be like if it ever flips the other direction?
Yeah.
So it's like basically biting the hand that feeds you.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. Of course, I would be thrilled to have a conservative Supreme Court. It'd be wonderful for all my present day political feelings.
Yep.
But that was a new idea that I've been introduced to that I've never given any thought at all. Very interesting. And actually, the guy who presented it in a debate I was watching is a conservative. So, really interesting. He's done research on it. I haven't read it. That's the gist of what I know about it. But it was a very interesting conversation that I just got to hear. So,
well, it sounds like, your experience in law school has been good. Like I said, in terms of just being able to have civil debate. You don't see that very often. I mean, you certainly don't see that in the news media anymore, and you don't see that. I posted on Facebook the other day, yesterday, a long-form interview with Mark Levin and his guest on his Fox News show, and just how refreshing it is to sit down with somebody, for a long time, for like a full hour, and somebody who's an intellectual or somebody who's accomplished, and actually talk to them and figure out why they feel the way they do. Whereas when the 24-hour news cycle, you only have little snippets. You have 2 minutes here or 5 minutes here, and it's like we're on to the next outrage. We're on to the next thing that's going to get us ratings and an emotional response. And I mean, there was a story a while back, Hannah, that you have these psychologists in Washington, D.C. who have actually seen an increase in their business because of Donald Trump's presidency, because there's so many people that actually do have this Trump derangement syndrome. Like, it's a real thing, and they need psychological help to cope with daily existence. And I'm just thinking, wow, it's amazing that we've come to this particular moment in history.
Well, first of all, I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I mean, don't get me wrong. If you need counseling, by all means, go get counseling. But that's a little ridiculous. But it's so refreshing to get to the meat of things, like get to the heart of a fully thought idea. Because I'm like you, I get very frustrated, even with Fox News, just 5-minute conversations about something, headline, move on, and you talk about it every hour on the hour, and you don't ever get
you're actually the
thought.
second person in the last couple of weeks that have said that they actually have to turn Fox News off sometimes because
absolutely. A lot of times I'll catch the headlines and then I have a brain. I can form my own opinions about it.
Yeah.
I don't need you to tell me my opinion. But as far as like the civil conversation, I don't know if it's like geographically where we're located, where Arkansas is so conservative that they just know they have to deal with us. And so like you can't just cause an outrage in the law school in the middle of Arkansas because conservatives are saying what they think. And I don't think that's the reason. It could be. It could play a little factor in it. But it almost makes me wonder, how much is the media lying to you? How much are those just little isolated events that are just happening in one place or the other, and that's not the atmosphere on campuses everywhere else?
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, certainly there's some truth to that. I mean, I think largely the opinions of flyover country, the place, the people that elected Donald Trump, that gave him the popular vote in Wisconsin.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, folks, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us today. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. You have found it. So I want to welcome to the program. I was just talking about this whole dicamba issue, but we have three farmers who are with us today, and these three farmers are Richard Coy, Jimmy Williams, and Sean Peebles, and they are in studio with us today. And it's a very tight camera, so I have to excuse us. So, guys, how you doing today? How you doing this morning?
Doing good, Paul. Doing good.
Okay. All right, so let's start with this whole issue. So we got the dicamba situation. The EPA says dicamba is good to go. Our plant board here in Arkansas banned it for a time, and now we've got the story on the front page of the Gazette saying, "Hey, you guys ignored your own scientists." Or we've got the emails or the Gazette, got the emails. So what's y'all's reaction? Let's start with Richard. Richard Coy, and you are a honey bee farmer.
Yes, I'm a beekeeper. Well, my reaction is that I can't believe that they ignored all of the science from EPA scientists and scientists from across the country that said the volatility of dicamba is a problem.
Okay. Okay, let's go to Jimmy Williams. And you are a berry farmer.
Yes, sir. Strawberries and blackberries and other produce.
Okay. And so what's your reaction to this?
I'm not surprised, to be honest.
Okay.
It doesn't surprise me. It's been the problem from the start.
Okay. Sean Peebles, you are an organic farmer. What are your thoughts?
Same as Jimmy's. I mean, I'm not surprised the EPA did it. I think that Monsanto's been buying their way through politics and through the EPA since it started.
Okay. So you guys have done a petition. And it's already been submitted to try to do what? What are you trying to accomplish with this petition?
Well, what we're trying to accomplish is to stop a dicamba over-the-top application at the temperatures that are high enough to cause volatility, which is the issue with dicamba.
Okay. So you also want the plant board to continue doing what they're doing, I'm assuming?
No, they need to do their jobs.
Okay, and what would that be?
Just look out for the good and well-being of agriculture in Arkansas. That's not what's happening. Mm-hmm. They're looking out for one thing, which is dicamba-tolerant soybeans and cotton.
Okay, even though they already put a ban on,
it's fixing to change. That's why we had to submit this petition.
Okay, so tell me more about that. Why is it about to change? Like, how do you know that's about to change?
Sean, that's probably the one for you.
Well, we've had a farmer file a petition with the plant board that was heard and was approved that allowed them to spray to June 15th with special application use permits to be able to spray all year.
Okay. And so...
And those guys that want dicamba, there's only one group, and that is guys that are farming too many acres and can't manage what they got.
Yeah.
Dicamba is an easy button.
Okay.
Cleans up everything. Unfortunately, it kills everything around it.
Mm-hmm. And this is it's a clear case of, like, if you've damaged somebody's property, this is really a basic American concept. You're responsible if you damage it, but we kind of have the situation where no, I mean, I'm using this product. I bought this product. I don't care where it goes after I use it. That doesn't seem right. I think most people say that doesn't seem right.
Well, the issue is physical drift with any herbicide is always going to be an issue, but most of the time it's pretty easy to track. You know where it comes from. Dicamba can go all over the place. We had some move across the end of a pumpkin field in 2017. No source to be found. Plant Board and BASF both sent representatives out. BASF is the manufacturer of Ingenio, which is one of the dicamba formulations.
Yeah.
And there was no source to be found. Luckily, it was a small amount of damage on one part of the field.
So even though there has been a ban for a certain time period throughout the year, I mean, there was still a ton of dicamba damage across the state, right?
More in 2017 when it was legal. There was a study in Missouri this year that estimated Arkansas still had 100,000 acres of damaged soybeans in 2018 under the ban.
Okay. All right. So Richard Coy, you're kind of not on camera, sir, and I apologize.
That's all right.
We have a very, very, very small studio. If you want to move closer,
no,
you can.
I'm good.
Are you sure? Are you sure? All right. I want to bring you in here now. Tell us about your bee farmer and operation. Tell us about everything. You're not just in Arkansas, right? You're in other places.
That's right. So my brother and I, we run Coy's Honey Farm, 12,000 hives. We run bees in Mississippi and Arkansas, from the Gulf Coast of Mississippi all the way up to Jonesboro. And our bees in Arkansas cover roughly 1 million acres that we pollinate, whether by pollination of watermelons and cucumbers, or it's pollinating soybeans and cotton. Soybeans and cotton do not require pollination, but it enhances the crop. And then we are also pollinating all of the wildlands, the wild vegetation, just because our bees are there. And so we cover a lot of area, and what I have seen in the last 2 years is a lot of the wild vegetation is being damaged or it dies. And in the areas where dicamba is used, our honey production has been cut down 50%.
Wow. So you're actually seeing less of a crop because of the use of this chemical.
That is correct. The last 2 years, we have lost $1.1 million.
Wow, $1.1 million. Okay, so what's going to happen to your business? As a bee farmer, what's going to happen to your business going forward if dicamba is not restricted in some way?
So we more than likely will leave Arkansas for honey production and move our bees to South Mississippi to collect a honey crop. We may have to bring bees to Arkansas just to have a place to put them down through the summer months, but they will not be collecting any honey, and they will be in poor condition. It's just a matter of space, of areas that we can take our bees.
Yeah.
But the bees in the last 2 years, our beehives are in poor health, which we don't have enough bees to send to our pollination contracts either.
Richard, maybe Monsanto will sell you some sort of dicamba-resistant honeybee.
I hope not.
Is that no? No, you wouldn't buy that?
No.
Maybe they've got the cure. They can just fix it right
well,
away.
I think they think they have the cure for everything.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, let's go back to Jimmy Williams, berry farmer. Tell us about your operation.
We grow about 2 acres of blackberries, and we've got 20,000 strawberries in right now. We started in 2012, and we've been growing ever since. So even though I've not been damaged by dicamba myself yet, it's been a lot of hard work, and we don't want to see that ruined. We have talked tentatively about if we lose this fight, we may leave the Delta and go somewhere to the hills where we can get away from it.
Yeah, because they're not spraying up in that neck of the woods.
No, not to the extent. No,
okay.
No.
So we have another example of a business potentially being uprooted, changing in a major way, if this continues. All right, Sean Peoples, let's talk about organic farming.
Mm-hmm.
Is there benefit to farming organic stuff in Arkansas? Tell us all the stuff that you farm.
I'm a contract grower, so we farm 2,000 acres of organic. We have a processing plant outside of Augusta, and we grow for Del Monte, Seneca, Gerber, any of the large corporations that want to contract a high volume of organic acres. We do green beans, process our pumpkins, edamame, sweet potatoes, numerous other crops.
Okay.
The benefits to us is the fact that we can make a living on 2,000 acres and we control our weed pressure effectively without dicamba.
Wow.
anybody can if they're well managed. Dicamba is not necessarily the answer. There are thousands of other chemicals out there that these other producers can use. They've chose dicamba because it helps the bottom line. It's inexpensive.
All right, so we've talked to your friends here. Their businesses are going to radically change if this continues. What about you? Are you guys got plans? Or if you guys lose this fight?
If we lose the fight, we will continue on right here in Arkansas until we go out. But we've already had customers tell us they won't be back to Arkansas.
Really?
No, yeah. Several large processing companies across the United States.
And that's because of dicamba?
Sure.
They cite that.
Yeah, because all these companies that we grow for, they're providing the inputs. It's their seed. It's proprietary to them. They're not going to risk the value of losing their crop.
Yeah, so it becomes a risk at that point.
Absolutely.
Okay. There's been legislation. You say you want the plant board to do their job. The fact that there was a ban at all was a big deal. Because other states, they don't have an independent plant board. But there's been, not once but twice, there's been legislation and an attempt to change the plant board. Now, if you talk to the people that are behind this effort, they tell you they want you to pass this legislation, but it's not going to change anything. Well, that doesn't make sense. Why, if it's not going to change anything, then why have the legislation? Clearly, it's going to do something different. Mm-hmm. There's an effort underway, according to my sources, to court the Farm Bureau to get them on board with this new plan that's been tried once and failed, tried a second time and failed. And a lot of people think it's because there was a dicamba ban in the first place, and that Monsanto, much like they've now gotten the EPA to go along with it, they don't want an independent plant board. So let me just get your reaction to this plan and what you guys are hearing about this plan and what you think about the plan. We can start with Richard if you want to go. We'll go right down the line.
Well, as far as the plan, I've heard the same information that you're talking about. I think when Jimmy mentioned he wants the plant board to do their job, yes, the plant board had a ban. After April 15th, you could not apply the product. The problem is farmers applied the product, and there so far has been no penalty for that. Maybe $1,000 fine, but there's nothing to deter the farmers from using the product. If the product is available to purchase, it will be used, and that's the problem that I have with it.
Okay, that it's available to purchase. Okay, Jimmy Williams.
I guess I'll come back to saying I wish they would do their job. First of all, science has been ignored since, well, not ignored, but cast aside as much as possible since the beginning of this. It shouldn't take this much debate to recognize that this product is flawed. There's nothing wrong with the genetics of the soybeans or the cotton. The problem is with the formulation of dicamba. It's still volatile. It doesn't sit down, and it doesn't take, a room full of scientists to tell anybody that. It shouldn't. It's trying to be ignored.
Okay, Sean Peoples.
Well, I agree with what Jimmy said. I mean, the plant board's got to do its job. The plan that everybody's talking about, that all boils down to this: it's money. Everything that's happening here, I was on the dicamba task force. I started in the beginning. When I first heard of dicamba, I didn't even know what it was. Hadn't seen damage in my area. I'm from the Woodruff County area, White County. I spent 2 days at Kaiser doing research that we were required to do so by the governor's office to be on the task force, to educate ourselves. I was in shock at what was happening. I was in shock that we had a task force because everything that we saw, it was volatile for 72 hours. That's your problem. You asked why you can't, nobody's responsible. Check your wind in Arkansas in a 72-hour period. It blows in all 4 directions. Mm-hmm. If I got 3 people spraying, I got no clue which 3 did it, or which one of the 3 did it.
Wow. So you're saying, why was there a task force at all when it's pretty clear that this is just a bad product that has no business being used, right?
Absolutely.
Gosh. Okay, so the plan specifically, you say it boils down to money. I'm trying to figure out what exactly are they trying to change? In y'all's opinion, what are they trying to do to the plant board? If it's about money or, what does that mean about money?
Well, if the plant board is moved into the Department of Agriculture like the governor proposes, the governor would have full control of every aspect of agriculture in the state, and there would not be a body like we have set in place now to oversee what is going on. So In other words, the money, whoever contributes to the governor will have input in what is taking place in agriculture in Arkansas.
Okay, so you're saying basically, whoever is the highest bidder, that's who will make the decisions, and it won't be the people who are actually in the fields, who are actually doing the work.
That's correct. You're not going to outspend Monsanto.
So it's Monsanto, and this is a huge. I mean, you guys realize this is a huge undertaking, right? I mean, is there anybody that's ever won against Monsanto? Except recently, you had the guy who, the court said he got cancer from Roundup, but that took years. I mean, there are people that were saying that forever, and it's now old. And now he's, they're saying, yeah, it can cause cancer. Monsanto's trying to dispute it, obviously, but. Where do y'all go from here?
You're doing it.
Okay.
I mean, you're right. We can't outspend Monsanto. They got $88 billion. I mean, there's no way. We're just a afterthought. I can tell you that in Louisiana, they continue to build a multi-billion-dollar dicamba plant down there during all this and phase them.
Yeah.
What we have to do is get to the public. We need the soccer moms to know, why is your soccer field dead? If it's volatilising for 72 hours and it's killing everything around it, don't you think you're breathing it?
Yep.
You don't have a choice.
Yep.
The more you spray it, the more it loads the atmosphere. The higher the number of acres that you spray, the more acres get damaged. If you let them spray all summer long on every acre, we'll all suck it in all year long. You want your kids to do that? No. I mean, you've got courtyard up at Osceola that was graveyard dead, killed the magnolia trees in it. I mean, how did it get there? There's not a field that close to it. We got movement up to 20 miles away.
Really?
20 miles.
It can go as far as 20 miles.
Can go over 20.
Wow. Well, so talk about this. Front page of the Gazette, scientists with the Federal Environmental Protection Agency recommended restrictions on dicamba use that the agency ultimately ignored when it recently allowed for the spraying of the herbicide on soybeans and cotton for another 2 years. Emails obtained by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette through Freedom of Information Act show that the EPA scientists on October 5th sought a 443-foot infield buffer between areas. Those buffers instead were set at 57 feet. So that's now the regulation. Now, would the 443-foot buffer, would that help things at all, or what do y'all think?
No.
Okay, so even if it, so
well, one way it would help is it would, if a gentleman was willing to follow the law, then there would be fields he would not be able to spray at all at 443-foot buffer, because it would encompass the whole field eventually.
Okay.
And so it would deter part of the amount of spraying that would be taking place.
Mm-hmm. But a 57-foot buffer, I mean, is that basically might as well not have a buffer at all?
That's correct.
As far as volatility goes, it wouldn't help anything. It's moving that far and further already.
So it's just a joke. I mean, why even have the regulation at 57 feet at all?
Well, here was the statement made to me. I asked a question at the task force. This is in the minutes. You can pull it up. Winthrop Rockefeller Center. We had a chemical rep there that was representing Monsanto and Bayer. And I asked him during the meeting, I said, how far or how close can a sensitive crop be to this? What's a safe distance? And his words to me, if you can see it, it's too far.
Wow.
I can see a long ways in the Delta.
Yeah, flat land, man, the horizon.
That was them saying that, not us.
Wow. So they understand what this is.
Sure they do.
So, and I guess, what do they think? I mean, how do we know what they think? Is it? They just say, well, we got we can sell you the resistant, the soybean, the dicamba resistant soybean, but that doesn't solve your problem, does it? Richard Coy, being a bee farmer, that doesn't solve your problem.
No, the problem that the beekeeper has is the wild vegetation that the bees desperately need to have a variety of pollen. That vegetation is being destroyed. And back in 2015, Penn State University put out research that said if this product is used in a widespread area, 50% of pollinator habitat will be destroyed, and 50% of pollinator visits will take place. So in other words, half of the vegetation will die, and then the vegetation that's left, only half of the bees will be able to get any nectar or pollen from that. So the pollinators and the honeybees, they won't have any food.
This is an issue that I think
can be very bipartisan in terms of who it appeals to. I mean, there's a ton of people on the left who are, in my opinion, overly environmentally cautious. But here's a clear-cut example, I think, where we're saying, hang on, I mean, if it's going to damage your private property and you're not going to be able to know who did it, then I don't think this is a product that needs to be used. This is the purpose of government. This is the purpose of government, to secure your effects and your property, to where when you go do something, you have reasonable confidence, not guarantee, but a reasonable confidence that your stuff's going to be there when you get back to it.
Everyone should have the right to grow a garden in their backyard and let it produce something for them to harvest. You plant a garden in the Delta region, very unlikely that you will harvest everything that you should have harvested because of the herbicide drift.
So let's talk about that. Speak to that. Has that happened before? I mean, when we're talking about just people who are not farmers, but they're just gardening in their backyard, and dicamba's killing their stuff too?
Oh, yeah, and generally they don't know what it is. They just think they can't grow a garden for whatever reason. They don't understand the problem behind it.
Wow, that's frustrating. Well, gentlemen, we're out of time. We got to go. I want to give all three of you whatever else that you haven't said, and we should have you back on again. But if there's something you haven't said, what you were saying, Sean, about we need the soccer mom to know these things. We need everybody to know. But so whatever else y'all want to say in the closing seconds, please go for it.
I'll just say that on top of being a berry and produce farmer, I'm a certified crop advisor. I spend my summers as well consulting on rice and soybean and corn acres. And in 2017, when all this spraying was happening, I spent one day a week over around the Truman area, and any field of soybeans that I saw that was not dicamba tolerant was cupped up and damaged. I mean, it was everywhere. You didn't have to look. The native vegetation, like Richard's talking about, was damaged. It wasn't hard to find. You just look around.
Yeah.
It was everywhere.
Yeah.
I want to encourage everybody to call the state plant board. Call the governor's office. There's a liaison to the governor for agriculture. Call her. We need you.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
I think that both of these guys have said what needs to be said.
Okay. All right. Well, there you have it, folks. This agriculture is a huge industry. We got small businesses at stake, and we're going to take a break. I really appreciate you guys coming in. Okay. All right, folks. It's Conduit News Radio. We'll be back in just a moment.
On my nerves, quite frankly. So nothing more than a hunch, just because what happened back in the general election with Trump said, I'm going to take it. I believed him. And so this time he said, red wave. By golly, I believed you because you were right last time.
Yeah.
But none of that's a shock. And I don't think it's going to be anything huge detrimental to us. It's going to make things much more complicated.
Yeah.
But the fact that we do have the Senate and Trump, I don't think it's going to be as bad as what it could be. So I'm okay with that.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We've got, the potential, she's going to be the next one, you would think. I mean, she's not going to retire. We don't want anything bad to happen to her. I mean, obviously, but I think a lot of people look at that and they say, hey, listen, this is probably going to be another appointment for Trump at some point in the future. And you'd think that whoever it is, Amy Coney Barrett, is going to sail through confirmation at this point. With what is it, 53-47? Yes.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Back right now. Oh, okay. All right, folks. Welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us today. I got microphone on top of microphone in here. We're all cramped. Anyway, I want to thank those great farmers, Arkansas farmers, and I don't know what to say. I mean, I really don't know what to say. I'm sure people, because there were 6 farmers that sued the state plant board on behalf of wanting to use dicamba. So I'm sure they would disagree, those 6 farmers who sued to be able to use dicamba. But, at some point it comes down to, you have this professional professional industry, and you have people who are, saying two different things. But I think there's a lot of farmers out there, from what I can tell. I mean, who I've talked to, I mean, it seems like dicamba is a massive problem. It is a massive problem, but because of corporate interests and their investment in the political class, they're getting their way.
Yes.
So
kudos to Ruth Bader Ginsburg for breaking her ribs and being back to work like 2 days later.
Yep, that's pretty big
Gotta
deal.
respect that.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta respect that. So, again, about being politically challenged, law school has been the first time that I've ever been introduced with the idea of term limits for the Supreme Court, and maybe the dangers of having the Supreme Court weighted one side or the other. And that's been an interesting conversation. I have no dead set feeling on that, but it was interesting to hear the commentary on it, because I do think we love that it's conservative right now, but what's it going to be like if it ever flips the other direction?
Yeah.
So it's basically biting the hand that feeds you.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. Of course, I would be thrilled to have a conservative Supreme Court. It'd be wonderful for all my present day political feelings.
Yep.
But that was a new idea that I've been introduced to that I've never given any thought at all. Very interesting. And actually, the guy who presented it in a debate I was watching is a conservative. So really interesting. He's done research on it. I haven't read it. That's the gist of what I know about it. But it was a very interesting conversation that I just got to hear. So.
Well, it sounds like, your experience in law school has been good. Like I said, in terms of just being able to have civil debate. You don't see that very often. I mean, you certainly don't see that in the news media anymore, and you don't see that. I posted on Facebook the other day, yesterday, a long-form interview with Mark Levin and his guest on his Fox News show, and just how refreshing it is to sit down with somebody, for a long time, for like a full hour, and somebody who's an intellectual or somebody who's accomplished, and actually talk to them and figure out why they feel the way they do. Whereas when the 24-hour news cycle, you only have little snippets. You have 2 minutes here or 5 minutes here, and it's like we're on to the next outrage. We're on to the next thing that's going to get us ratings and an emotional response. And I mean, there was a story a while back, Hannah, that you have these psychologists in Washington, D.C., who have actually seen an increase in their business because of Donald Trump's presidency, because there's so many people that actually do have this Trump derangement syndrome. Like, it's a real thing, and they need psychological help to cope with daily existence. And I'm just thinking, wow, it's amazing that we've come to this particular moment in history.
Well, first of all, I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I mean, don't get me wrong. If you need counseling, by all means, go get counseling. But that's a little ridiculous. But it's so refreshing to get to the meat of things, like get to the heart of a fully thought idea. Because I'm like you, I get very frustrated, even with Fox News, just 5-minute conversations about something, headline, move on, and you talk about it every hour on the hour, and you don't ever get
you're
complete
actually the
thought.
second person.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us today. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way. Happy Thanksgiving. You guys are driving to Grandma's house or to family's house. Be safe. Take the extra time to look before you switch lanes. AAA saying it's going to be all kinds of cars on the road, so I'll remind you to be safe. Keep the hands at 10 and 2. And we so appreciate you listening this morning, starting the beginning of your Thanksgiving Day holiday weekend with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Folks, I want to welcome back to the program. We've got Mr. Michael Doherty. Now, Michael, that is how you pronounce your last name, correct?
Correct,
Okay.
but I answered anything.
I understand. So Michael Doherty, he's the CEO of the Cyber Education Foundation, founder of the Justice Society, and also the author of The Devil Inside the Beltway, the shocking expose of U.S. government's surveillance and overreach into cybersecurity, medicine, and small business. Michael, how you doing this morning?
I'm well. I'm actually starting my weekend down in Florida, and so it's a beautiful, relaxing time.
Nice. Well, I want to have you on this morning because there's this article came to my attention and I know you totally understand this, but over across the pond in the United Kingdom, and there's also whispers of this happening, in our own country. We've got these companies who are trying to microchip or talking about microchipping their employees. What's your reaction to all this?
Well, it makes a really great discussion for people to realize how much privacy we've already tossed out the window just for convenience, and how some people still just don't get it. Now, I understand how they don't get it, because when we signed up for these things, the fine print was so buried, and what they could do was so unknown. But we are allowing ourselves to be, diced up and analyzed and monetized just because we want to have something convenient. So I don't see the world being microchipped yet. I'm still naive, I guess, enough to think that most people aren't that dumb. But this is not good.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I tend to think that too, but then I think to myself, there are times, okay, and I'm just going to admit this. I'm on my cell phone, and I'm having to retype the same letter in backspace that we get because I keep hitting the wrong thing with my thumb. And there are times that I just say, man, I know what I want to say. I wish it would just pop up on the screen there. And I feel like that's the gateway, isn't it? I mean, that's the gateway to merging technology with biology, to where I don't know if a chip would do that, but eventually some sort of, contact lens or something, be put that just links up. You know what I'm saying?
Well, there's all sorts of technology that can be done that can do those things, and that's true. And artificial intelligence is a double-edged sword. The issue is this: convenience is the number one motivator for human purchases. And we love everything that makes our lives easier. The thing is, we don't understand that there's a price to pay with this, and that the price to pay has been covered up, and they've used the word free, and really, I think they've allowed us to fill in the word free, because it's not free, and the price to be paid can be really, really bad. It's not just that they get to decide where we shop. They like to find out what our political views are, and therein lies the problem. Because if the people in power think you're the other side and you're the bad guy, they're going to divide and conquer and isolate you. When the Obama administration was in power, they really, really tried hard to crack, donor lists open to find out who's funding, because they want to find out who's funding their enemies. This type of data that's pooled is what concerns me, that we don't understand what we're allowing to happen, and that we allow it to happen a lot already. Inside your body versus in your back pocket of your smartphone isn't that different, except that it's easier to turn off your smartphone or take it out of your back pocket. So, it's a privacy discussion that's already a mess.
Okay.
We don't need to make it worse.
Wow, I hadn't thought about that. I had never thought about the cybersecurity implications. I mean, I guess I should have, of political reprisals because of really what's a freedom of association issue. I mean, we've experienced that here locally in Arkansas. You have let's say you have a scorecard of legislators' voting records, and then you have the politicians that come out and they start to want to know. And they start to say things like, your donors, which are private, we need to pass a law that, exposes who they are, that it's of public record. And the only reason why they would say those things, Michael, is because they want to target them for supporting an organization that's putting out a scorecard, information telling the voters how their politicians voted. But I had never even thought of all of the information that's available based on our associations online.
Well, and that's what Facebook will do. They'll look who your friends are. They'll look at and they'll use artificial intelligence to do it, to just try to target you and figure out who you are and what you're going to want to buy, and how they can put you on a list to sell with somebody. But they also can use those things for political things. I mean, this is why, they went so crazy with Trump using that British firm whose name is
Cambridge Analytica.
Cambridge Analytica. But the hilarity of that was, wait a minute, you guys do the same thing. It's just you don't like the other team using it better than you use it. That's what happened. And this is why we have to really pause and understand what's going on, and don't think they want us to know, because they don't want us to know.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the problem, because when you weaponize this information so that one team wants the weapon, you see really terrible work on trying to solve this problem and protect the public. I mean, our cybersecurity defenses are terrible right now, and it's because we've got people that have no real knowledge doing it, that are unaccountable bureaucrats that can never get fired. It's awful.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit, just in terms of the cybersecurity. I think if you ask the average American that casually observes the news, especially the mainstream news, they're going to say, oh, you mean Russia, affecting the election or hacking the election? I'm not suggesting that doesn't go on, that they don't attempt to influence, but where do you come down on that whole thing?
Well, I mean, as far as the Russia thing goes, it's a joke, because espionage has gone on forever, and the Democrats are such hypocrites because, they laughed Romney out of his, debate speech when he mentioned Russia. But as they don't pay attention to anything unless there's a political advantage to it, and then they have complete memory loss and they've got magical thinking. So now, since Trump won, they had to find an excuse. And so they scream Russia, 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 which I have to say, China must be laughing their tail off, because China is every bit as bad, if not worse. China is on full court press right now to just, slice and dice and remove all the technological things we have. So we can design a plane, and 2 years later, there's a strangely similar one flying around from China. And we don't understand that. That's the uniqueness. If we take away our entrepreneurial engine, our freedoms in this country, and turn into the socialists that these people want us to be, we will lose the advantage that makes us the leader of the world, because we have so much innovation. We still are the kings of software development. We lose that, then China trumps us, because China, with their culture, can't create that engine. You have to have that type of freedom and carrot and stick and be able to create that type of wealth if you're that successful.
So China can't create for themselves, so they come and they steal. I think the number is $600 billion in intellectual property a year.
Yep.
Now, I just want to get your reaction to this, Michael. What if I told you that there was a movement here in my state of Arkansas where we have been actively recruiting communist Chinese companies to move here, to open up businesses here? We give them incentives to do so at the local and state level. Now, those deals right now are all jammed up because of Trump's trade war with China. But why? I mean, I'm sure you didn't know this, but is this a good thing for our state to do as our chief economic policy?
My guess is they want to do that because they want to try to create some tech hub and attract money. This is what happens when we don't have enough education inside the country, and so we go and try to bring in foreign, technology. We're really naive. And selfish, and this is what happens with politicians. All they care about is their short-term, short-sighted gain, and they keep the rest of the public basically ignorant. And we don't see the freight train coming from the big picture, which is, this is the price we're going to pay. Google, Facebook, for example, they're not domestic companies; they're international companies. You don't want all the data with them either, because they're also playing to the other side when they have to compromise civil rights in China, for example. So we're very naive about all this stuff, and it's all interrelated. And careful, folks. Don't sell yourself like that. You have to look at the big picture.
Yeah, don't sell yourself. I completely agree. Now, earlier, we're talking with Michael Doherty. He's CEO of Cyber Education Foundation. He's also the author of The Devil Inside the Beltway, the shocking expose of the U.S. government's surveillance and overreach into cybersecurity, medicine, and small business. You mentioned Cambridge Analytica earlier. Originally, that story was so anti-Trump, but it resulted in Mark Zuckerberg going before Congress. That's what a lot of people forget. I mean, and now we've got all these massive tech company losses in the stock market. What's your reaction to that news, Michael?
Well, I mean, those ups and downs in tech are a normal, healthy thing. And tech in the long run is always going to be great. But I think it's important to show tech is accountable. And when you get to be the size of Facebook, they can't double in price. And now they're getting, a little long in the tooth. And they're, you notice how whenever a company thinks they're invincible, that's the time to sell. So, and Facebook, they're not going to go bankrupt per se, but they can't grow at the pace they're growing, and they're starting to get some infighting because they have been doing bad stuff as the entire industry's been doing, and people are now having the time to go, hey, when I signed up 15 years ago and checked that box, I didn't know I was going to become some sort of, piece of meat, and if it was to where you're going to sell me shoes, that's one thing. So, there's issues in tech, but I think it's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's called, the open market. And, it's messy, but we're all better off in the big picture, and sometimes there are losses. Okay, well, grow up. That's the way that goes.
A lot of people think Facebook's listening to everything they say. Back to our original discussion about putting chips in, our bodies, and
right.
we think people are a little bit smarter at that. They're not gonna be crazy just yet and be like lining up for the chip just yet. What would have to happen? What would Facebook have to be doing for us to see like a mass exodus and people be like, I just can't do this anymore. I'm canceling my account. What would it be? The revelation that they're listening to everything we're saying and much more, or is it something else?
Well, this is what scares me. I hate to say this, but we have such a mass population of people that just don't get it. And so if they don't get it, they it has to hit them in their face, in their personal day-to-day life. So there has to be such, I think, an antitrust slam to Facebook, such a split, or such a change in services that they're so restricted that people get so appalled by intrusion. I mean, unfortunately, we have the reason we get in these political problems is we have a very large populace that doesn't pay attention, and they get exploited like crazy with fear, uncertainty, and misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
Something with that crowd that just is worried about their own day-to-day existence would have to fall down. The rest of us just stand on the sideline, weeping, screaming frustration, hoping they'll wake up.
Michael Doherty, we really appreciate you being on the program this morning, and I just want to wish you, your family, a happy Thanksgiving, sir. Enjoy Florida.
It'll be great. Yeah, thank you. You too. Appreciate you having me.
Okay, thank you. Folks, we're going to take a break, going to reset, going to be back here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
watching the last couple of weeks that have said that they actually have to turn Fox News off sometimes because
Absolutely. A lot of times I'll catch the headlines and then I have a brain. I can form my own opinions about it.
Yeah.
I don't need you to tell me my opinion. But as far as like the civil conversation, I don't know if it's like geographically where we're located, where Arkansas is so conservative that they just know they have to deal with us. And so like you can't just cause an outrage in the law school in the middle of Arkansas because conservatives are saying what they think. And I don't think that's the reason. It could be. It could play a little factor in it. But it almost makes me wonder, how much is the media lying to you? How much are those just little isolated events that are just happening in one place or the other, and that's not the atmosphere on campuses everywhere else?
Well, I mean, I think, certainly there's some truth to that. I mean, I think largely the opinions of flyover.
Bob Maloney here with a developing story from ASA News The Parrot. China is coming to Arkansas. We go live to the press conference where the Communist Chinese executive is addressing Arkansans for the first time. Let's listen into the translator.
On behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China, we invite you to come and visit the newest named city in Arkansas, China, Delphia. We are very pleased to own an American city. Our communist government is proud to do business with the mediocre state of Arkansas. We are happy to take your money and your trees and send the profits back home. The Communist government of China was pleased to learn the taxpayers of Arkansas are excited to contribute their money with the hope, if you build it, one day jobs will come. We are excited to take your fields of capitalism and turn them into fields of communism, where every Arkansan has nightly dreams of Mao. China is looking forward to our investment of $1 billion in what is now called Arkansas. We see this as an investment in our future, and that future will be called New Beijing. Chinese investment will make Arkansas a great place for jobs as the People's Republic of China will succeed where the Soviets failed. As we build our roots deep in Arkansas, we are thrilled with the potential new ideas and advancement we will share with our people back home. Soon we will have the world's largest runway in the South China Sea, and we thank Arkansas for contributing to our noble cause. In closing, once we make China great again, all of you will see the glory of the revolution of Mao. And Arkansas, whatever you do, please never call the FBI.
Paul Harrell, Parrot.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so looks like CNH Hog Farm for the second time has been denied a permit to continue operation close to the Buffalo River watershed. This, of course, we have detailed on this program. The pressure that's been put on the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality is from far leftist groups that, if you follow the ties, eventually will lead you to George Soros's pocketbook, like the Sierra Club and others. They're not called the Sierra Club, but you've got to know. You've got to be able to follow the trail of personalities, employees, money, and that sort of thing. We've detailed this on the show. So the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality is denying the permit to CNH Hog Farms. And this is, if you know the history of this, and I don't think the Gazette article gets into this the way they should, but for a long time, it appears that the government of Arkansas was simply stringing CNH Hog Farms along. telling them to meet certain requirements. They would meet those requirements, and then the government apparently would come behind them and then change the requirements and say, no, you don't need this permit, you need another permit, a different one with different metrics and things like that. It's been a nightmare for the folks who are just trying to raise some pigs. And this is typical government stuff here, and it's really a shame. It's an absolute shame that the state of Arkansas is not reducing regulations in this regard and making it easier on businesses to work, especially ones that want to be responsible. The assumption from the wacko leftist environmentalists is that not only do they want to produce hogs, but they also want to pollute the watershed, that they want to be bad stewards of their environment. This is not the case. The environmentalists, you don't get to come into the argument. You don't get to come into the conversation assuming that you're the superior person, that you're the better human being. And that's what environmentalists tend to do. You can raise hogs, and you can do it in a way that protects and preserves the environment. C&H Hog Farms has attempted, from what I can see, to do just that. And the government simply, for arbitrary reasons, is saying no. This will be challenged, I'm sure, but for now, this has to be pretty sad blow to C&H Hog Farms, even though I understand they knew this was coming. But that is the news on that. Folks, I want to leave you, even if with all of that, we still have a ton to be thankful for. And I read earlier in the show Thanksgiving Day proclamations from George Washington and Abraham Lincoln in the midst of Civil War. But then on October 20th, 1864, President Abraham Lincoln said this: "It has pleased Almighty God to prolong our national life another year, defending us with his guardian care against unfriendly designs from abroad, and his mercy, many and signal victories over the enemy, who is of our own household." And this is referencing the Civil War. "It has also pleased our Heavenly Father to favor as well as our citizens in their homes, and soldiers in their camps, and our sailors on the rivers and seas with unusual health. He has largely augmented our free population by emancipation and by immigration, while he has opened to us new sources of wealth and has crowned the labor of our working men in every department of industry with abundant rewards. Moreover, he has been pleased to animate and inspire our minds and hearts with fortitude, courage, and resolution sufficient for the great trial of civil war into which we have been brought by our adherence as a nation to the cause of freedom and humanity, and to afford to us reasonable hopes of an ultimate and happy deliverance from all our dangers and afflictions. Now, therefore, I, Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States, do hereby appoint and set apart the last Thursday in November next as a day which I desire to be observed by all my fellow citizens, wherever they may be, as a day of thanksgiving and praise to Almighty God, the beneficent creator and ruler of the universe. And I do further recommend to my fellow citizens, aforesaid, that on that occasion they do reverently humble themselves in the dust, and from thence offer up penitent and fervent prayers and supplications to the great disposer of events for a return of the inestimable blessings of peace, union, and harmony throughout the land, which it has pleased him to assign as a dwelling place for ourselves and for our posterity throughout all generations. In testimony whereof I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the United States to be affixed, done at the city of Washington this 20th day of October, 1864, and of the independence of the United States, the 89th. Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States. Folks, I hope you have a happy and blessed Thanksgiving. And I hope, as I said last hour, even though you may have political divisions among your family, when you pray, pray for reconciliation. Pray for divisions and wounds to be healed. Pray for wisdom to abound in the hearts of men, and let that be from the Almighty, and then let him get the praise for doing it. That would be a good prayer, as well as be thankful for being where we are today. Be thankful for who the Almighty has placed in positions of power for a reason. I'll see you guys on Monday. We'll have bells on, jingle bells. Arkansas, happy Thanksgiving. Be safe.